Oh, can you see me?
I got you. I got you. I got you.
Yeah, good, good, good.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I was sending a request. I was like, the request is sent.
I've requested it. I couldn't do it. I was just like, why isn't it working? It's
No, it's all good.
always a bind. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to Instagram. They're going to take a lot of notice. How are you? Where are you? Tell us a bit. First of all, tell everybody who you are and what you do. And then...
Hi, guys. Yeah. I'm Remi. I'm a producer. I also rap. Yeah, and I've been working in the industry for going on to 7 years now. So it's been a bit of time.
You've been doing some amazing things.
I have been. Yeah. I've been doing quite a lot of amazing things, even in my little makeshift studio.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Very nice mic. I love the mic. So it's like my pride and joy. Outside of my cat, the mic's like the pride and joy of my life. So
what's the cat called?
Ruby. She's in another room at the moment though. So
yeah. We've got a cat called Goblin, but it's quite hated, poor thing.
Oh. No.
One person.
Our cat's well loved. But she's in the other room. She was in here. She'll just jump on the table and stuff. So I just thought, keep her out.
Right. So tell us a little bit about the projects that you've been trying to get going during lockdown, like what they are and how they came about and how you had to change step really quickly when. Tell us some things.
Well, it's been I can imagine for everyone, it's just been really difficult. Likewise for myself. So with me, I was fortunate in the sense I actually got funding from the National Lottery, Awards for All, or one of the bigger pots, basically big lottery, essentially reaching communities, to run a project. However, I applied for that funding in February, and the whole point of it was to do a live event. I got the funding in I think a week or two after lockdown. I think, or not? Was it? Yeah, around about a week or two after lockdown, when everyone started to, and that's when I got the funding. So it was a bit of a weird one because it was kind of like, well, I've just been given funding to run a project that is supposed to culminate in a live event, and there is no way I can do a live event. So I found that I spent months just wrecking my head around what I should do. And even now, to be honest, I've not exactly found a solution yet because clearly with the government, they're starting to, lift things. So even though there's not really been a roadmap, I know we've heard about a roadmap, and there hasn't been a roadmap for theatre properly in regards to dates.
So the parameters keep changing. Were there any conditions in that initial set of funding about so having got that funding for a live performance, did you have to then contact the funder and say, it's not going to be a live performance, I'm kind of adapting as I go? Is that all right? Or it was okay?
I just took the money and ran. I'm only joking. No.
And I'm in Barbados, so it's great.
No. So how I saw it, and I was speaking to my partners in regards to like what we should do, and I felt like, well, the thing is, ultimately, even though it's a negative, what's gone on is kind of negative in a sense of we can't actually do what we want to do. This situation does allow us to try new things. So we decided with my colleague that we'll just try new things. And then when the funding, because they never mentioned anything in the email to me when they gave me the funding. I think partly because they already decided to give it to me, probably before the coronavirus got as bad as it was. Because I remember receiving an email from them. And they were saying they just needed some they need to clarify some details about the organisation. Some funders do that, where they need to speak to a treasurer or get like a treasurer's email or something like that. So
tell us quickly what the funding stream is, just in case it's useful for other people that might be able to apply for the same thing.
Well, it's Awards for All. They're the ones that we went to for it. Big lottery, same thing with the Arts Council. Well, same funders as people who kind of fund the Arts Council as well, same people. And my project was to do an event in Manchester with a view of developing it and taking it on tour. It's more of a multidisciplinary arts event. That's what I was planning. Well, theatrical event, multidisciplinary arts. And yeah.
You're talking and then you see a comment and your whole mind just goes.
Yeah, I look like
yeah.
But yeah. So,
and tell us quickly, because we're going to talk a bit about the work you've done around it, but just tell us about the project, like who are the collaborators and what it is. Sounds great.
Yeah, so Yeah, so we have 5 collaborators, and we have myself. I'm one of the collaborators as well as the producer, as I'm rapping in it. And we have a composer. We also have a visual artist who's going to be doing projections. And we also have a script writer who's going to write the script for the music with the projection that's going to be on top of it. So it's essentially that's the team.
Topic?
Yeah, so the topic essentially, now this was before coronavirus happened, but the topic was about the fear of the future.
Perfect.
So it was actually like bang on. It was about, and I only made it for myself really, because I'm like, I'm newly married and everything else, and I'm wondering what am I going to do. So I just made the idea came from that, and yeah, like, oops, sorry, nearly dropped. And yeah, I feel like for me, what happened is when I thought of the idea and I spoke to a few people, it really started to get clear in my mind exactly what I wanted to do. And then, yeah, we started doing the project. So we've got, so far the lyrics are finished, the music is finished. And we're currently in the stage of writing a script, and we're in talks with a venue. Even though originally we were going to do it online, because of how the government are working. I mean, I'm an optimist, I suppose. So I guess I'm thinking that, at some point it's going to open up, like maybe early next year. So maybe we could just push it back until early next year, maybe. There's a massive gap here, but between January and March is what I'm looking at. I know it's huge, right, but within those first 3 months. So we can just like design the project, maybe do a little thing online, just put it out, but nothing amazing. Just showing a little bit like a teaser of what the project is. And then with a view of actually doing the full project in March.
And one of the things that's amazing about that is to have an idea and have quite a clear sense of how it's going to travel and kind of what its makeup is. And then something like coronavirus happens and you have to be incredibly flexible about where outlets might be or how you might have to reorganize that project. And one of the things that you've done, which is amazing, is school yourself like crazy in various forms of sort of organized flexibility. You were telling me sort of courses that you found and done. And I think it's really, really useful for sort of emerging practitioners to hear about. So tell us.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the backdrop as well to it. I've always felt like I want to develop my skills anyway as a producer, because I'm a firm believer that a lot of the skills that we have as artists can actually be applied in a variety of different ways, not just necessarily in what the conventional way of doing art, but you can do it in a number of different ways. So I started to say, well, you know what, let's try and take on project management. So over the past 3 months, I've basically gained 3 qualifications in project management, 3 different ones. Basically bought an online course. One of them is called Prince 2. But one of them is just called the Basics of Project Management, which, as a producer, you probably know the basics. So that was pretty easy. And then another one was called Prince 2. Where
did you find that? You wanted to go and do the basics of project management. What's your route into that? Where did you find it?
So I found that on IT Online Learning.
Great.
That's why I went on to get my course. And that's just a giveaway, that course, I suppose, for the rest of it. The main ones really were the Prince 2, the Agile, and change management, which I'm now studying change management.
It's a moment to be studying change management. It sounded so good when you talked about it, and just talk us through what that is a little bit. Sort of, first of all, where do you find them and how much do they cost? Kind of area, you don't have to tell us exactly, but just, are they free? Are they not free? Are they, what?
Yeah. So they're not free. I think so. The people we went to, I went to, should I say, the people I went to were IT Online Learning, and they cost around 1,500 quid or something like that, to do it. But you
probably already working, but it's like it's a good piece of investment or development in a skill set because what was interesting is you were saying they were designed by the civil service.
Yeah, they were designed by the civil service. So it's project management for government, essentially. So when governments are doing their activities and they need a project manager, Prince 2 specifically is the standardized qualification you're going to need in order to do anything for the government. So I decided to go for that because if the government are doing it, clearly it must be on a big scale. It must be on like you must be able to do large projects if the government do it. So I thought, well, I'll take that course. So I took that and then I passed it.
That I think is brilliant, just as a solid skill set, because were you to use it for theatre, excellent. But if for whatever reason you weren't finding theatre projects in the next couple of years, it sounds really adaptable. If it's a civil service built thing, it's just a management tool that will build your recruitment profile for anybody or any job, really.
Yeah, absolutely. You get like a cool little badge as well that you can put.
Crucially, there's a badge. Most importantly, you get a badge.
You get a badge. But yeah, you get a badge. So, the course it was. I think if you're a project manager or you're a producer, I think you would find a lot of it fairly easy. I think most of it is just lingo and terminologies that you need to get used to. But what I found really interesting with Prince 2 was really clarifying how you break a project down into stages, or how you should break a project down into stages. And sometimes I do that, but sometimes I don't. In previous projects, I've done that, and sometimes I've not done that. But now I'm much more clear on how I would break down a large-scale project.
What stages are they? Can you sort of tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, so in the Prince 2's terminology, they called it the sponsor. In our terminology, we'll call that a funder or an organisation who wants to commission you to do work. It's exactly the same thing. So when an organisation is asking you to does a commission, you have to fill out a form to do a commission. Usually the organisation has an idea of the kind of things that they want to commission from the start. They'll usually put that in your application. They'll usually put that in the, I don't know what you would call it, but the job post. Like, we want to do a project about this. So what would happen first is the ideas phase. So you would go through that by going through a number of ideas and working out which ones are the most likely to float and hold water. Essentially, and then once you've done that, that's the initial stage, the pre stage. Then you go through like a feasibility stage, and then that's where you do your, similar to this. All this stuff here is exactly what producers do, so it's not really that different. But that's where you do, your budgeting. You probably start checking out your venues. You're looking at artists. You start sending out emails to the agencies asking, are these artists available? All that kind of stuff. So that's your feasibility stage. And then you go into your foundations phase. It's quite long, so I'll break it down as short as possible. But you go into your foundations phase.
Can I ask you, if you were a sort of emerging producer and you felt that you didn't have much confidence, say, in something like budgeting, would the Prince 2 be useful in terms of actually teaching you budgeting as much as it would how to use budgeting?
So with Prince 2 directly, I think it's much more useful. It won't teach you different styles of budgeting, but it will teach you what you should budget for. And how you should look at budgeting, so the kind of items that should be on a budget, which, to be fair, is something that I found new. So not a lot of the time, I would probably budget for a lot of stuff that really and truly, because in the arts, there's a lot of stuff that can be in there that we don't need, but it looks good. You know what I mean? And
you're waffling. Name some. Go on, name it.
So there could be stuff like, let me think of a good example. There could be stuff like, let's say, one lighting company. They're a really good lighting company, so you can go to this lighting company to do the lighting for your venue, but you've got another company who's local, just as good, but you may not have worked with them before. So now it's like they're a bit of a risk. However, based on the cost of travel, for instance, to get to your venue, what they might add to that, or based on the cost of the equipment that they've got or whatever, it's cheaper. Now it's actually better to go for that company over the one that's further away, let's say, even though you may have worked with them before. Just because you can look at your when you look at like feasibility, you would consider, well, this company is close, it's local, there's less chance of anything happening on the way to getting here, for starters, to the venue, if the venue's in the same area. So there's less chance of a crash happening, let's just say, or there's less chance of equipment being broken on the way from A to B. That kind of stuff. And also as well, so it's good to forge relationships.
Stuff. And as a producer, you have to know all that when you're putting in a cost line for something, presumably.
Yeah. So that's basically it. So it's more that kind of stuff where it teaches you what you should prioritize, how you should prioritize it, and what are the things you should look at. So I'll say that's really helpful, especially in the feasibility stage.
Prince 2 one, sort of like that it's really practical. It's practical that it walks you through the producing of any particular project that you're doing. You can sort of plug any project you're doing into that system, and it helps you go through the stages.
Yeah, absolutely. It's literally just a framework. It can work in any given situation. So you can, if you've got that qualification, you can literally go into almost any project management kind of role. And
that quite broadly recognised.
Yeah, it's so everywhere in the UK and Europe, Prince 2 is definitely favoured in the UK, because the UK made it through Axelos, which is a organisation who do project management, and they basically invented the Prince 2 methodology, and the government have basically taken that on. But also in the rest of Europe, Prince 2 is highly appreciated, is highly recognised, especially the UN and EU. They use EU project managers generally for the UN and the EU are Prince 2 qualified.
It sounds brilliant, especially at this moment when I feel like people are having to be so versatile about their job. Like, you know, if you're a freelance producer right now, you might end up anywhere in the next 2 years, or it might be anywhere else in the world. That's good. So tell us a bit about the other two that you're doing as well. So one was called
Agile.
Agile. Tell us about Agile.
So Agile, it is more it's more computer orientated, Agile. However, you can still use it in a variety of different circumstances and a variety of different projects. The reason why I say Agile is more computer orientated is because for Agile, you would need the environment to be there. So with it, if you want to work in an Agile way, the organization would have to adopt an Agile approach. And generally, organizations in IT are the ones who have adopted the Agile approach over other organizations. So
you feel like theatres haven't?
Theatres haven't, mainly because obviously it's digital largely, but yeah, the theatres haven't adopted that. So usually when you look for like jobs in agile jobs, they'll usually IT jobs or digital design jobs, that kind of stuff. If you want to be a project manager, usually they'll say, we work in an agile environment. You'll probably hear that word, or you hear other words like Scrum and Kanban terminologies, but you know.
What does that mean in a practical sense? Like, what is an agile way of working? Like, what?
So it's iterative development. So it's
yeah, no idea. I'm a writer.
You know what the thing is?
I've got a pad of paper. That's what
the thing is, because I've been at the computer for so long, I'm like, all these words, these buzzwords have just come in. I feel like I've done an Arts Council funding bit again or something, and I just know the buzzwords. But essentially, it's a way of working where you develop a project bit by bit. So if we're taking this into a theatrical perspective, you may develop the script first. So you'll do that one part, and then that will go live. So that will basically, say if you've done a script, you might put it out online for people to read. And that'll be your first tester. And then after that, you would then look to maybe get cast members in to read the script. So you'll do like an Instagram live reading. That's the other stage of development. And then after that, and obviously feedback throughout will be continuous. So let's say you've done a script, feedback will come in, or we didn't like that script, just from the common public. We didn't like that, or we did like that. You'll change it. You'll get your actors in, they'll read the script, they'll be like, oh, I like that actor, I don't like that actor, or this actor did well, this actor did it like this, and then you can develop it further. And then you essentially just keep doing that. It's essentially a process where it's project management, but it's more or less geared around, I suppose, quick results, in the sense of putting stuff out straight away to know whether it works or not, rather than developing the whole thing and then getting to the stage of the final production and being like, actually, this doesn't work. Now it normally works. Sorry.
Like, just for this moment, like the current environment, if you've got an idea and you want to make something quickly and you want some feedback that's going to happen quickly, like the agile route sounds excellent. Presumably you've got to be quite robust in as much as the feedback that you're getting back has got no filter on it. So
no filter.
So how is that? Like, do you have time to process that, and then you just put out another iteration?
Yeah, correct. And I guess you need a strong team as well. So, I mean, I do think it would work really well with theatre, actually, especially if you've got a really strong team who you're working with. Because it is a thing of, it goes out and then it'll come back and it'll go out again. It'll just keep developing over and over and over.
And how do you, as a producer or as a creative team, sort of work with that level of feedback? Because essentially what you're doing is doing a questionnaire or allowing every single member of the audience to comment on the show. Yeah. And then you're remaking the show with those comments in mind. Whereas normally you would just have a creative team. So you'd have sort of 5 or 6 of the creatives that made the show. Oh, sorry, we went off. Somebody's asked us to finish telling us about the stages of Prince 2. I shall shut up. Tell us about the rest of the stages.
Oh, that's cool. So, okay, where did I end? I forgot where did we get? Foundation. Foundation, yeah. So that's your business plan, or your basically the outline business plan, or where essentially the organization has a need, they've realized what the need is, and then you've said, what is feasible, the idea of like essentially providing a solution for the need. This is the feasible option. Then after that in foundation, you develop like a plan, which is a project plan will be included, which is a business plan. And then that will then go back to the organization, and then they'll approve it. And then at that point, you start developing the projects from there. So that's where you start bringing in your team. That's when you start the right team members, along with the organization. They'll normally be watching what you're doing as well at that point when you're bringing in your team to know whether they're the right people and whatever. But that depends on the industry, I suppose. But anyway, you bring in your team and then you start developing the project. At that point, you go through, there's loads of really crazy terminologies. There's something called managing a stage boundary in Prince 2. Works in a very similar way to Agile. But what you do in that situation is, say if at the end of the outline stage, the first managing a stage boundary comes in, and that's where you report back to whoever the supervisor is or whoever the person who owns the organization is, just informing them of what the progress is on that stage. And then you make the plan at that point for the next stage. So it's very similar to Agile. That's why I say they both really work well together. That's why you take them all. It's largely you're planning by stages. So your manager stage boundary comes in there. You send your plan over to whoever the person is in charge, or if you haven't got anyone in charge, say if it's just a group of a team that you're working with, you'll reflect with your team, like, this is where we're at the moment.
Next stage.
That is the next stage.
Venue or someone that you're reporting to, does that venue have to have a working understanding of Prince to be able to understand how you're talking to them, or is it
no?
You're just going to check in and offer them a stage of Prince that they don't necessarily have to understand?
Yeah, they don't necessarily, like, if I was to put on a night, what that would look like for, let's say, an event I was going to put on is, let's say I booked the venue. I've told them what I'm going to do in the venue. That's the business plan, essentially. This is the event I'm going to run. They're going to have these artists in, rare. It doesn't have to be a 5-document business plan. Literally, it can just be a page. Actually, the business plan develops as the process goes on. So at that point, what you do is, let's say the venue says, okay, we're willing to, do this event. We're willing to do this event. Then you just send an email back to whoever the venue is and say, okay, so we've got these artists now on the event, and we're looking to take this further. You know what I mean? That's basically
pretty much a full qualification, but you can sometimes find online intro courses. Whatever job you do, it helps officers. It helps an officer like it. Civil service uses all the time. Difference to us. And how long does it take? We're gonna do all the stages for the person that asked. How many more stages are there? How long?
There are a lot of stages, so I'll just go through it, and you can maybe Google it. So the managing the stage boundary, you generally go back to that after the controlling a stage. So the controlling a stage is when you're actually doing the work, and then you've got the product delivery part of it. That's where if it's in theatre, that's where you give it to the director, I suppose, and they'll deliver that especially. Or let's say the product delivery part, let's say for a script, you'll give it to the writer, they'll write the script. They've delivered a script, that's the product for that stage. But then afterwards, it might be a director, they'll deliver that part for that stage, and they'll give it back to you, and then you report back to whoever you need to report back to. Literally, the managing a stage boundary is about planning the next stage and reporting to whoever you need to report to keep them involved in the process, so they know how the project's developing. You can decide how much you want to be talking to those, because obviously venues are very busy. So if you say, well,
and presumably you then hit rehearsal.
I think it does cut off.
Somebody just asked what you're talking about, but I feel like, so we're talking about Prince 2, which is a project management course that you can take. And it's in many stages, and we're just getting to the stage where we're talking about delivery, which was interesting because you said it was the delivery of the script. What would rehearsals then be? Would they be a separate?
That'll be a separate delivery, yeah. Okay. So, and all that happens in the managing a product delivery stage. And then eventually it goes to the end project phase. I'll end it quick at that point.
And when you do end projects, are there also skills about how to evaluate, so you can look back at what you've done and what you've achieved? Because I think it's really, for freelance producers particularly, when you're not working inside like a building ecology, like knowing your work and what you've produced, and then trying to work out how successful it's been and what your learning objectives are for the next one, is probably quite hard. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what's really beneficial with this process is that we create like a daily log. So on the project I'm working on at the moment, I've created a daily log for it and a lessons log. So a lot of the stuff that you actually give into your venue or your funder or your investor, if it's a commercial theatre production, whatever you choose to do, literally all you're doing is just, keeping them in the loop at each stage. And then all those notes that you've kept in your daily log, all of the reports that you've given on a monthly basis or 2 monthly basis or whatever, to the person who's in charge of the venue, that will then all go into your evaluation. all of it. So essentially you're doing your evaluation as the time throughout the whole process, and the feedback and everything else is the same. And Agile works pretty much in the same way. It's just a bit more team orientated, and it's just like you stick to a team, and it's just much more of a thing of, while with Prince 2, you don't have to like put the script out, like essentially with Agile, there is an element of, no, you have to like get it out there.
And it's, so if you're doing this in a theatre example, if you're putting on a show, or if you're putting on a night or something, who's your main point of contact? So if I'm an emerging producer and I've never done this before, and I'm thinking about schooling myself in Prince 2, or I'm thinking about doing my first gig, what are my very, very early stages? So who do I ring? I've got an idea for a show. I've got some people together that I think would make a great show. Like, how do I go from there to actually getting a job and making it sure it's going on? Who am I talking to?
In regards to just producing in general?
Yeah, pick a case study. So if you're doing I don't know, like a show, like a night, a night, who do you ring? Do you ring the venue?
Yeah, I ring the venue. Straight away. I ring the venue. I basically go straight to the venue when I'm doing a night. Theatre production, to be fair, works slightly differently because I've generally gone through commissions to do theatre productions. But when I'm doing a night, I ring the venue up and just basically ask them.
And who are you asking to talk to at that venue?
Venue manager. So event manager, whoever the event manager is at the venue, they're the people I speak to in regards to putting on the night. So I've literally just sent an email before getting on this call here to a venue owner, a venue manager, just basically asking, can we use your venue in March, essentially.
Great. And when you start having a conversation with that venue manager, what are the key questions that you're asking? Like, are you asking how much it is to hire it? You're asking a bit about, so just imagine you're brand new and you're emerging and you want to write to your first venue manager and you go, I've got this idea. What are you asking from them?
So for me, what I'm asking from the venue manager is, well, I did it the same thing here. So it'd be first and foremost, I rarely ever go into the pricing straight away, first and foremost. So I'll normally do my research on the venue, but I'll normally look at capacity first, to know exactly like what the capacity is of the venue. Then I'll start looking at equipment, basically asking what equipment do they actually have. And these are the things I'm asking off the venue themselves. I'd also have a look at what the previous experiences are, what previous, even though I've seen it online, more just like how they normally would set up what they normally do when an event's happening in their venue. So that might be, have you got bar staff, for instance? Or do we have to, or is it something where we have to bring, because if you're doing a venue, let's say in a non-traditional venue, you might have to bring your own bar staff, for instance, or whatever. So it's like your bar staff, is that a part of the cost, for instance, or does that come inclusive with the actual pricing? Also, at that point, I also talk about the pricing as well of the venue, like how much it costs.
And if it is something like bar staff, what do you then do? Do you have to take responsibility for your staffing your side? So you have to deal with all the insurance and everything else?
Yeah. So you have to deal with, when it comes down to doing an event where it's not in an event space, you're literally taking over a spot. Then you have to get your licenses first for your bar staff. Now, I can't remember the license, what it's called now. So, because last time I did that was in 2016. Pretty much since then, I've been working in spaces where there's been a bar staff member. But there was a I can't remember the name of the license. But there's basically, I think when I paid about 50 quid for it. And basically, it gives you a license for a day to basically run an event with a bar in it, essentially, in a venue that's not traditionally meant for it to be a venue site specific. And there's loads of
you then have to look at marketing. So you've got your equipment in and you've got your bar staff sorted and your acts, you've spoken to them, and you presumably, do you contract the act?
Yes, I contract the act. Now, I've done that in various different ways throughout the time. Generally in theatre, it's been a contract. And then when I was producer for an orchestra, again, it was a contract. But when I've done just live events, normal ones, I've generally just basically said, this is what the idea, when I say a contract, is in they've signed a contract, it's been on the paper, they've signed a contract, and they've given me the contract back, and I've filed it. But when it's been events, in general, I've not done that. So in general with events, I've just kind of said, look, this is the idea, this is what we want to do, send us your invoice over.
Great.
When it's done.
And what about marketing? Is that venue side or is that you?
Depends. So I've written, one thing I would say what I found good with theatre is that they're really good. I found them being, well, the ones I've gone to have been really good with marketing. But when I've done events on my own, like or booked out bars or venues, their marketing, I've not really liked it. I've always felt like they just put it on the website and they may put it on the social media, but they don't really push it. There's no programs or there's no this, there's no real push for it. I also think with theatre, there's generally, most theatres have like how can I put it, but not, I don't know what you call them, repeated customers, that's the word. They've got repeated customers. So generally when they put out an event or a theatre production, the same customers will be interested in viewing it. With a bar, or with it, if you're putting an event in a bar or even a performance space, the venue doesn't have necessarily the pull that a theatre might have. So you have to generate a lot of your own promotion through Facebook, through Twitter, through Instagram, more Instagram and Twitter actually. I think that's I found that a milestone, that working Twitter out was so hard. But like, I think Twitter's actually quite good for promoting nowadays as well. So, yeah.
Exciting. And then, so just tell us a little bit about the final course that you're doing, the Being Ready for Change. What's it called?
Change management.
Change management.
Yeah. So with that, I think that would really suit a director. I've always thought that. I think because it's very much about psychology and about how to deal with people who are going through change. I mean, yeah, producers, we do that, but it's about the people side of it. And I think directors generally are masters at working with people and not getting people to do what they want, but getting the best out of people, essentially. And I think change management and movement directors as well, for that matter. I think with that, I feel like it very much is people orientated. So I'm learning a lot about psychology. This one's been, in some ways, the hardest one for me because it's very theoretical. So I'm learning a lot about like the Maslow. What's the Maslow pyramid?
Hierarchy.
Yeah, hierarchy. Maslow hierarchy. That's the one. I'm just going through it, which is the whole, what is it? The hierarchy of needs, like the different things that people need, and that's why they stay in work or don't stay in work. I've learned about loads of other really dense theoretical things. So I mean, you can definitely do it, but I have to admit, even for me, I'm like, oh, this is theory. I mean, I was just revising for it today again. It's theory. It's a lot of theory.
It's amazing, like talking to you and just taking this moment, which I think is so crucial, like to develop your skill set. So you sort of go, you had this funding, you're about to put a show on, massive curveball comes.
Yeah.
Use the time to just really work out what your skill set is. It's then hugely applicable across all sorts of, you presumably feel pretty well armed going into any gig now. You can be much broader.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when the coronavirus happened, I think that was one of the things that I thought about when things got furloughed, when everyone got furloughed, even though, and I understand that a lot of people have taken it difficultly, and it is difficult. I mean, I found it a difficult time as well. But I think, obviously, I was blessed in the sense that I got funding and everything else, you know what I mean, as well. But one of the things that I definitely wanted to do is increase my skill set. So hopefully I'm still alive, you know what I mean? But when this whole coronavirus thing ends, I want to be a better producer than I was before it started. And I think that was my specific aim when it happened.
Really, really good. And I think that's just such a good thing to tell anybody that's coming up, because I think one of the things about this moment is a sense of powerlessness. So like, I'm just really interested that it's instead of trying to promote more, instead of kind of endlessly using social media to push yourself out in the time that it feels isn't working, there's a different perspective, which is to go in and to kind of re-armor yourself. So you go,
exactly,
how do I build up my skill set and how would I apply them differently going forward? I think
it is. And you know what I feel like? I feel that in a lot of ways, I do feel like there is a kind of, even though there's a lot of bad going on, this is a huge opportunity as well. And I think I'm taking it as that. And I know it's, a lot of people don't take it like that, but I'm really trying to force myself to see it. When I say all this, there have been times when I've been like, oh man, this is terrible. Yeah. So let me not fake that. There have been times when I've been like, oh man, I hate this. But what I try and push myself to thinking is, this is a huge opportunity. In a lot of ways, things are kind of going to restart in a lot of ways. And for those who may have not been able to get a look in before, now there's a good chance for you to actually get a look in when things start to reboot. Theatre's going to look completely
a really different shape. And certainly people I've spoken to doing Creative Corner, there's this really excellent thing that everybody has taken the moment. They're like reskilled. They're looking at their skill set and they're working out what the next step is. And I think it's so exciting. I get really excited about what's going to get made on the other side. It feels really thrilling.
Exactly, and we don't know what's going to happen with the industry of theatre, like at the other side of all this. You know what I mean? So it's better just to prepare, and not just theatre, but just the live event scene as a whole. Like what's going to happen, we don't know. So it's like, well, I want to prepare so that when it all comes back, I'm better than I was before. You know, and I've got more to offer than I did before, and I think that's the mindset that I'm taking on more and more. And it's not easy. I'll be lying if I said it was. But as much as possible, I'm pushing myself to think that way. Like, actually, this is an opportunity for me to develop and come back better and stronger than I was before.
Brilliant. And what's the next thing? So the next thing we can see of yours in real life is probably going to be in the spring.
It's gonna, yeah.
Before that, we might be able to see some teasers online. Has it got a name? Yeah,
so I'm toying with two names. Jungle of Darkness or The Dark Jungle. I've not really thought about it. It's got to be one of those because the Dark Jungle is very much involved in the play. So whatever it's going to be, I'm not really sure. I can't say.
Either
and
way,
to be honest,
out for both.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
So we know. No, I was going to say it's good. It's a plug. We can keep our eyes peeled for either Darkness and the Jungle or the Dark Jungle.
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking, but I work in a creative team and we are co-collaborating, so I could get absolutely shut down. I've been shut down in a few things. I was speaking with a scriptwriter yesterday and went to play some basketball and just talked about like what we're going to do. And yeah, he had some completely different ideas to what I had.
Scriptwriters, don't listen to them.
Don't. I was like, oh, you should do this, you should do this. And he was like, yeah, I was thinking about doing this. I was like, that wasn't what I was thinking about. But at the same time, it was really good. Like, I actually really liked it. I liked the idea we was going with. So it's really good collaborating in that way. I would highly recommend, like, just if you're a producer out there, letting the artists you work with be as creative as they want to be and not really try and stifle that. I found that such a benefit in making the music and just really learning about people and like how different people work. So like the composer, sorry, I'm waffling about.
No, it's good. It's really interesting.
But the composer, he's very much the guy who works with. He was very much about making work that sounds right, if that makes any sense. Not that sounds right, but that's not conventional. But so it's hip hop. A lot of what we're doing is very hip hop and grime orientated. So he made music and he made his music very much like hip hop and grime. Like initially, and I was like, well, this isn't. I want you to do you. And it took a while for him to say, actually, I'm just going to do what I do. You know what I mean? Rather than doing what and he did what he did, and he literally got down to it.
Yeah, such a gift, I think, when a producer does that really encourages you to trust your own instincts. I think.
Yeah, just because you could tell he was kind of like, are you sure this is right? Is this what you're looking for? That's the key. He was kept on saying, is this what you're looking for? And it's kind of like, no, I'm looking for what you want to do. You know what I mean? That's what I'm really looking for. And we'll just work with whatever you've got. And the music he's produced is absolutely amazing. However, I don't know if the guys are watching this, by the way, but if the script writer, he's the kind of opposite. So he's kind of like, I want to turn away from all of these things that we've been doing. I'm just going to do my own thing in my own way. So it's a new way of working. Because it's like, well, I mean, there is certain things that we have said, like, these are the things that need to be in there. But he's like, I'm just going to write about this. So I'm really enjoying it. It's amazing. It's amazing. Just learning about people. And the way he thinks a lot about stories. Like, so a lot of his work, when he's writing scripts, obviously he's a script writer. I mean, I should have, I don't know what am I expecting. And he does like plays, he does also screenwriting, he does quite a few things. But like he takes a lot of stories and he twists them into his own kind of imagination and like his own thing. So almost like he's distorting a lot of stories. So how he even comes up with ideas, he'll usually tell me this story that I have never heard of this book that I've never read or even heard of, and then say, yeah, well, I'm looking to twist it and do this with it. And it's like, well, you can do whatever you want with it, mate. Like, I don't know the original. Like, so really nice. I really like working with him. It's amazing, actually.
It sounds wonderful. It's so nice to hear someone full of like creative excitement. Like, it's such a time of lack of hope. It feels really thrilling. And one piece of advice, and then we should go, but one piece of advice for emerging producers. So if people are just starting out or they were starting out when coronavirus hit, what would you say to them over the next couple of months in terms of advice?
Advice, I would say. See, I don't want to come across as like pseudo, like, oh, keep going, and I actually want to give, like, I mean, although all that stuff is right. I think some of the advice I would give is, I suppose, try and find your own niche. I think, and be confident in what you do. Like, I think, and I really wanted to stay away from saying something like that. I was trying to think of something
No, it's good.
better
It's
to say.
good to hear it, I think, at the moment. It's good. Yeah, like work out what's unique about you and really stick to your guns.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've done. So I've got a unique process and I just stick to that. And like, I think because, I mean, especially even I've had some, I mean, even before this project, I worked on a project not long before, and it was probably the hardest project, really hard. It was so hard. And I definitely doubted a lot of my skill sets and what I do. And I had to just really look at actually the things I've done in the past and say, well, these things went really well. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep going for it. So, yeah, I think, yeah, not without sounding cheesy.
Do it,
yeah,
do it,
you,
own
do
it.
you, yeah, do
Keep
you.
uplifting, go on.
Just charging my phone. Yeah, so that's kind of, sorry, just charging my phone. That's it. There you go. And it goes back. Yeah, so that's kind of what I would say. It's difficult. I can't think of anything non-cheesy to say regarding that.
I think it's really important right now to believe in yourself, and also because nobody has a clear view of the picture of the future. So to have a picture of what you want to achieve or what you want to bring about, and just commit to it fully, and know the clearer that you see that picture, the more likely you are to pull it off.
Absolutely.
Is a really, really good thing. And every week I have to do a writer's challenge. And so my writer's challenge this week, and I keep veering off they're not actually writing challenges, but this one I think is really important, which is if you are an emerging writer, is to go out there and research producers, because it's really, you need as a writer need to know which producers work on the kind of work that you want to make as much as the other way around. And I think writers often get into a bit of a passive position where they wait for people to come to them. And a taste match can definitely, I mean, what would happen if a young writer or an emerging writer approached you rather than you approaching them?
Yeah, so some of the things I've looked for when it comes down to people approaching me as a writer, and it's just, so I guess it's related to my work, and I wanted to say a little piece about producers after, actually, but I'll answer the question. Well, just something based on what you were saying. I wanted to piggyback off that. But yeah, with writers, what I really look for is originality. I'm a massive fan of people just, I suppose, being them, because especially when you know the tricks of the trade, like, oh, this works and that works. It loses its kind of pizzazz, it loses its that kind of sparkle that you have, like when something's new and it's unique. It loses it when at this point this is going to happen. You can see it, and I feel like that needs to be, as a writer, I think you need to just be, when you're original and you're doing your whatever you do, I feel like there's that shock factor there always, and there's that thing of wow, like some of the best plays I've watched have been plays where you can tell this is somebody's life.
And it's just sticking to your guns and what your honesty is, and sort of getting rid of the shoulds. I think there is a real thing about that, and that actually links into what we were saying earlier, is that I think the theatre industry is going to be such a different shape by the time it comes about next time, that just making what you want to make in the way you want to make it is excellent. Ignore the person down here who has told you, I don't know what that's saying, but basically the whole point is that you're on here to talk and I'm not. You can ignore that person entirely.
Yeah.
You're allowed to talk as much as you like, Remi. Really interesting. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us? One of my flatmates has just really usefully started hoovering outside the door. Could you hear it?
Not properly, no.
I'm just like, shush. What can you do?
I think what I would say, as an encouragement to producers, actually, this is what I wanted to kind of get to. So as I said, I had a really hard time on one of the productions I've worked on. And I think I realised from that production that I have a really unique way of producing. And I do think if you're a producer out there, like, you are a creative as well. And the way you produce is actually very creative. And I wouldn't necessarily get so, because with producers particularly, you get pushed into the logistics mode so much. Just, could you get this? Could you get that? Could you write that email? Could you cast that person? Or like, whatever it is, you need to do, or you need to do that. You need to do this logistics thing. You need to do that, and you're not an artist. But what I would suggest for everyone who wants to be a producer out there, you're creative as well. And be creative in how you go about doing things. It's not just logistics. You're not just there for that. You're there to be creative and to have a vision, and to see how you can make that thing become a reality, and be encouraged by that. Because one of the things I was discouraged by, you know, when I went through my hardest times, I felt like, I did feel like I really doubted my producing ability. And then I realized, well, no, it's just because I'm creative. And like every creative, you've got to learn your craft and learn how to develop what you do. And that's what encourages me. That's what's encouraged me since, just to make really good work. It's just by learning my craft and learning how to do things better.
And from my side, I can tell you, a good producer makes all the difference in the world, because your job as an art, like as a writer, is to imagine, is to create the imaginary world, and producer that you know is being as like inspired and forward moving with making the real world meet what you're doing in your imagination. It is so thrilling and exciting, and it just, this huge amount of trust where you go, if I do my bit to the best of my ability, I know is going to build a brilliant boat and sail it out to the people. And it just feels like, oh God, it's so great just to know you're in safe hands. It's really good. So thank you.
No problem.
Continue, please continue, and stay in touch and let us know what you're up to.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.